evening. The government, the country, perhaps the world itself, sits precariously balanced this evening between what Mr. Haig has called terrible fighting and a peaceful solution to the Falklands crisis. And this evening's report of more naval bombardment of military targets around Port Stanley seems to suggest that things may be becoming more precarious by the hour. So far, attempts at the diplomatic solution, which our task force was sent to the South Atlantic to support, have failed through no fault of our own. Both Mr. Haig's plan and the Peruvian plan, bringing in the UN, which we accepted, have been turned down by Argentina. It looks as if Mrs. Thatcher's options become increasingly restricted to military options, and I'll be talking later to Cecil Parkinson, a minister of Mrs. Thatcher's, member of her war cabinet and chairman of her party. However, further attempts at the United Nations to arrive at the peaceful solution, which is still Britain's top priority, do continue in New York. So first over to New York and to Peter Taylor.
There is a degree of optimism here at the United Nations headquarters in New York this evening, generated perhaps more by the fact that the talks are still going on than by knowledge of progress made. At this moment, the last hope for a ceasefire rests with the new Peruvian Secretary-General, Pérez de Cuellar. He's having a series of meetings with the Argentinian Deputy Foreign Minister Enrique Ross and Britain's ambassador to the United Nations, Sir Anthony Parsons. Sir Anthony is in regular telephone contact with Mrs. Thatcher herself. A general framework has already been agreed: a ceasefire, mutual withdrawal of forces, and an interim United Nations administration of the Falkland Islands. But, and this is crucial, there's a deadline. This interim administration will only last until the end of this year. Agreement has to be found by then. If it isn't, nobody knows what will happen. Will Argentina assume sovereignty over the islands, or does the British fleet go back in again? The British hope that by then Britain will be off the hook and loath to put itself back on once again. But the most immediate problem concerns that interim administration. Argentina wants the UN to be in sole control. Britain insists that the old Falkland Islands Council should have some role. This is the issue which the United Nations Secretary-General is trying to resolve at this very moment. But at least it seems that the main problem to date, sovereignty, has been set to one side. Yesterday, the Argentine Foreign Minister, Costa Mendes, said that it was no longer a precondition of negotiations. But the British, having analysed his every word, still remain suspicious.
Peter Taylor in New York, perhaps some hints of progress there, which we'll be taking up with Mr. Parkinson. At a critical moment like this, it's just worth remembering who started all this and how, and the principle at stake. All right, the British Foreign Office was at fault in not recognizing the immediate urgency of the 150-year-old Argentine claim to the Falklands. But it was Argentina who unquestionably put herself in the wrong by acting unilaterally to settle this long-standing diplomatic dispute by military aggression. For this, Argentina was condemned by most of the world, and the UN Security Council passed the urgent, mandatory Resolution 502, calling upon her to withdraw her troops at once from the Falklands. This, in 5 weeks, they've refused to do. Logically, and in accordance with the UN Charter itself, we can't be faulted if we use force to get them off. But, of course, there's more to war than logic, and as last week's clashes showed, the actual use of force could cost Mrs. Thatcher the support of the rest of the world, which is so important to our cause. Even so relatively routine a military operation as the bombing of the airstrip at Port Stanley to protect the task force arouses some misgiving in world opinion, which is quick to think Mrs. Thatcher too military.